Kia ora, no mai, haere mai, welcome to Te Ao with Moana. In the space of about 6 months, Christopher Luxon, the former boss of Air New Zealand, has become a household name as leader of the National Party. No small achievement. He's only been in politics since 2020, winning the botany seat of former National MP Jamie Lee Ross. Now, leading the opposition is no walk in the park. National has fielded 5 leaders in 5 years. So what makes Christopher Luxon different? I sit down for a kōrero with a non-drinker at the Kingsland pub. Kia ora, nice to meet you. Look, we've even got a blue wall. That's how.
So nice to meet you.
Thank you.
I've watched you on telly over many, many years.
Oh, have a seat.
Well, look, it's a great honour to be with you. As I said to you, I remember you as a kid coming through watching all your music videos.
As a kid, stop there. Okay, you're already offside. Now, are you going to make it to the next election?
Absolutely,
Yeah?
absolutely. Look,
Feeling confident?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The National Party's been through some real travails over the last 3 years. Quite dysfunctional at times, to be brutally honest with you. Last year we had to reset and really come together and say, righto, do you want to keep mucking around and fighting with each other, or do you actually want to focus on the New Zealand people and actually put forward our ideas and oppose the government, but also propose ideas as well? I think we've got a good team. We've resorted the team, got the people on the right sort of areas that they're interested in, and they can really add a lot of value with and really think about what would take the country forward.
So you were born in Christchurch, raised in Howick.
Yeah.
What kind of values shaped your thinking?
Well, I was really lucky. My parents both left school very young, 15, 16. They got married young. I'm the oldest of 3 boys, young parents, but they were amazing and really incredible folk. Born in Christchurch, ended up coming to Auckland because my dad was a sales rep with a company called Johnson & Johnson. We were pretty active, but I smelled terrific because I was covered in talcum powder and all that good stuff.
Nice.
But my mum was really instrumental in sort of shaping a lot of my values, as was Dad, because she ended up coming to university with me to do a diploma in social work, and she's gone on to become a really good psychotherapist and counsellor in Christchurch. And so, she was always one of those people in our family that was always saying, walk across the room, try and understand someone who thinks differently from you, and value people. And so, she brought that side of it, and my dad was just an amazing enthusiast for life. If you meet him, he's just such an optimist and such positivity, and he just sort of said, look, never let your circumstances define you. And so for me, as a first in my family to go to uni, to get out, and I had 16 years overseas, I sort of learnt never to apologise for being a Kiwi overseas when you compete with the kids from Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard or Yale or Stanford, and to be proud about being a New Zealander.
Well, you seem like a very bouncy, positive chap. What was your relationship with Te Ao Māori when you were growing up?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Very little exposure. Growing up in Christchurch, many of you remember what Christchurch was like. And then because I left New Zealand when I was 25 and I was overseas for 16 years, a lot happened, from the late mid-90s through to when I returned in 2011.
So what did it look like to you from that distance?
It looked, I didn't have a lot of exposure, at all, really. A little bit when I came to Auckland. But there was no teaching of Maori history in New Zealand, or deep understanding of New Zealand history, really, when I came through school. What really shaped me was when I came back from New York to run in New Zealand. And I went on quite a big journey there. And that was really, very exciting for me because I started to realise just the immense talent that's in the Maori community. I worked with Annie Fitzsimons on putting Tuputoa, with supporting that, which was an internship program to get Maori students into the corporate pathways of New Zealand. I went through a lot of work with Ngāti Porou, who were very kind to me, built a good relationship, and then we started talking about business that we could do together. And then there was, things like tamoko and,
Yes, I remember all that drama.
Yeah, but it was a really good process to go through because essentially, we formed a network. I formed these networks inside the company where I'd get, I had 400 Maori, Pacifica employees in a network, and giving them confidence to tell me, hey, listen, how should we be thinking about issues like this? And so tamoko was a big deal because in global aviation and global hospitality, you're not allowed to have visible tattoos. And we're the only airline in the world that does, allows people to bring their full self to work in that way.
That wasn't without a scrap though, was it?
Well, no, but I think in fairness, I think we went through that process really well. I had other people that were very good to me. Arahia Bennett was really good on, there was issues around licensing of Māori words like Kia Ora magazine and things like that. So for me, in New Zealand was a great experience because we embraced te reo. We started to use it on board the aircraft before it was embraced often by the broadcasters.
So Chris, those are lovely things. Those are the beautiful parts of Māori culture that help brand New Zealand, that add value. I mean, I remember when you were in the role of in the iwi development role space, holding that portfolio
for a short time.
Yeah, for a short time. But you did say very candidly that you struggled with that because as a non-Māori, you don't have that lived experience. So
I did.
What's changed within the year?
Well, I think, it's still the same reality, and the National Party in general, frankly, doesn't have enough diversity and enough of a Māori voice within it. And that's a function of a very poor election result where we actually wiped out a lot of diverse candidates as a result. And I want the National Party to be a mainstream political party. That means that we have to be able to reach out to all communities across New Zealand, and we have to become a much more diverse and inclusive place. And so that's the focus that I'm going through right now as we think about candidates for 23 and how we actually get the party into the right place.
Just going back to your comments, which I thought were very candid and honest about the challenges being in that space, right? So if you're Prime Minister, you're going to make critical decisions about Māori and where we are. What, in your experience, apart from your role at Air New Zealand, will help inform your decisions?
Well, I think a lot of, as I said before, like the values of just trying to understand people who are different from you and to be able to walk across a room and actually listen and engage.
Are you listening and engaging though?
Yeah, yes, I am. And I think, that's what I have learned is actually everything starts with a relationship first and foremost. And from there you can talk about the what, but actually you have to have that relationship in place to be able to have those conversations, to be able to learn, but also to be able to engage. And so I've had a number of people who've been very good with me, even in the last few months, that I've been able to just, have meetings with and sessions with and bounce off a whole bunch of issues around Māoridom. And so, they've been very generous with their time. They've been very, we haven't always agreed in the content, but that's the point, is that there's an interchange and there's an interaction, and we coming from good intent to want to get to a better place.
If you don't have that experience, then one would expect that expert advice would be really important.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. So what is the drama around the issue of co-governance? What does co-governance mean to you? Yeah,
well, look, co-governance is a couple of things. The first thing I'd say to you is I don't think the government's been very clear about co-governance. And I think if you went outside on the street and you asked an everyday New Zealander what is co-governance, they're unable to explain it.
But can you explain to me?
Yes, I will.
What is it to you?
What I'd say first and foremost is on constitutional issues, whether it's been treaty settlements or things like co-governance, the government needs to come out and actually say what it is, what it isn't, and be very clear with New Zealand people. Spend your political capital, make the case, and take people with you. Otherwise, you end up in a place where things like this can become very divisive. For us on co-governance, I've got a couple of it. We've had co-governance in a past national government that's been bounded around treaty claims and really around iwi, managing local natural resources, essentially, working with local government, central government. What we now seem to be talking about is co-governance with respect to the delivery of public services. And our issue, or my issue, is sort of more, I believe, a single system with innovation and components around it, targeting people on the basis of need, partnering through devolution and through localism with iwi, with local government, can actually get better outcomes. And our party, we're really obsessed on outcomes. And when you look at polls, what are the number one, number two issues for Māori? The same issues: cost of living, housing, those sorts of issues.
Yes, so do you believe that current systems are working for Māori?
No, I don't believe. I think we're constructively dissatisfied. The results and the outcomes are not the same for Māori and non-Māori.
Okay. So do you believe it's at a critical stage where we need critical solutions?
Yes, and the way I would go about it is to have a single healthcare system, and there is mechanics and innovation that we can create within it. A good example for me would be the COVID story, right? Initially, the government said, we'll just run everything centrally, thank you very much, from Wellington. And it wasn't until they engaged with Chinese communities, with language issues to get vaccination rates up, the same happened with Maori Pacifica, that we were able to use local community organisations to get to those communities.
So you're talking about service delivery, okay?
Yes, but the reason I'm doing that is because otherwise, this is a government that's added 14,000 bureaucrats at $2 billion
Excuse
in less
me,
than 4 years.
And a couple of years ago, when you were as part of that business advisory group, you suggested to the Prime Minister that there should be a whole new ministry set up around urban centres and planning. Now, there's a lot of money that would go into that. So is it Maori Health in such crisis that we do need to pile more money in and actually be very brave and bold in our thinking?
Yeah, and all we're going to do is we're going to amalgamate, centralise and build a massive bureaucracy that will end up competing with Health New Zealand, and as a result...
No, we're not. No, that's misinformation.
No,
that's misinformation.
I don't think that's the way to go. I don't think that's the way to deliver
you're
health
into
outcome for Māori. I'm focused on outcomes.
You're into an assimilationist model. You want the one system that you suggest will work for everybody. In the last 40 years, there have been massive attempts to address inequities within the health system. Since 2000, there was like 220 billion thrown at it. Everybody, all the experts, the Heather Simpson report, the Maori Health Advisory Group, all the NGOs that wrote to you and David Seymour last week, the Waitangi Tribunal with its interim recommendation, they all say we need an independent Māori authority that will work in a certain way. Yeah. Why do you not trust expert advice?
No, because I think we'll end up creating a massive amount of bureaucracy, and by their own admission, the Maori Health Authority won't deliver a single improved health outcome for Māori in 5 years.
What is your proposal except to tweak a system that has been tweaked ad nauseum and not worked?
Yeah, so that it hasn't been tweaked. One of the things that you could do is embrace fully and execute fully the social investment model that Bill English was talking about.
Do you trust Māori to come up with solutions?
Absolutely, absolutely.
So why are you not listening to
And that's what we could do, like in terms of a single healthcare system with a Māori Health Directorate within the Ministry of Health. We could have iwi partnership boards that actually work very well.
Chris, I used to work in health.
Yes.
I was a National Māori Smoke-Free Coordinator. There was a Māori directorate in there. They struggled in there. This is well documented.
Yeah, so why don't we make it more efficient and more effective?
Because everybody's tried for the last 40 years.
Yeah, but look what's happened in the last 4 years. We've removed all healthcare targets out of the system.
You guys like to chop things back, tax and blimmin' strip it back.
No, I think that's a bit unfair.
I think that's pretty apt, really. After the break, more on what matters to Māori with Christopher Luxon. So you've got the Maori Health Authority, you've got Health New Zealand. They co-commission community and primary services and
you don't think there'll be a lot of conflict, complexity?
Why would there be? They've got the co-chair on this body is sitting on that one. If anything, it's going to be streamlined and focused. I mean, why don't we try something bold and different?
Yeah, so what I'd love us to try is to properly implement social investment, where we actually target people and support people on the basis of need. We're not doing them.
But your idea is really just to reform within. We're looking for transformation.
I am too. I want those outcomes to be gone.
When you were on that business advisory group, why was it that when you were dedicated to changing infrastructure and you recognised that it was in a critical state, that you said to the Prime Minister, things are intergenerational, systemic issues here, we need to really be bold and tip things over and think big. So why is it that when it comes to Māori health, you're not thinking the same?
I am thinking boldly, but what I'm saying to you is I think there's a different model, and I don't think we've fully explored or pushed that model really well or very hard. You keep framing it as it's the same model. I'm talking about something quite different. I'm saying to you there's something called social investment. We need to be able to use data, we need to be able to identify the need, we need to be able to really put huge resources into solving that.
Why do you think that the Maori Health Authority idea isn't based on data and research?
I'm just saying to you, I don't think, I've seen it happen already. We've taken all the polytechnics and put them all together into one big mega entity. We're taking all the DHBs, as imperfect as they are, and throwing them all into one big entity. We're taking all the 3 waters out of 67 district councils, throwing them back into 4 big entities. That doesn't work, it just builds massive bureaucracy. We've had 14,000 bureaucrats at $2 billion added in 4 years in this government.
You were quite keen to start something else with a whole bunch of bureaucrats.
No, but what I'd say to you is that's $2 billion that you could have spent on Māori health outcomes.
Okay.
That's taxpayers' money that actually has been wasted, that actually hasn't gone to delivering outcomes, right?
So the former Treaty Settlements Minister,
Chris Finlayson.
Yes, Chris Finlayson told our show that we need to reappraise the relationship between kāwanatanga and rangatiratanga. What does the treaty mean to you? What does that reappraisal of kāwanatanga and rangatiratanga, what does that look like in action to you?
Well, for me, what it means is that we are first and foremost one sovereign state, Secondarily, yes, rangatiratanga. We want to be able to see devolution and localism where iwi have control over, as we've seen in treaty settlements, local resources. I think those are good models. Healthcare, education, there is components, as I said, within the single system that's quite possible where there is actually really good influence over Māori for Māori outcomes. That's great. We're very supportive of all of that. And then finally, all of us are fully equal under the law in New Zealand. And so
do
that's
you
our
understand the difference between equal and equity, though?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So the treaty, Te Tiriti, is all about co-governance. It is the ultimate co-governance model. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think the treaty's been very good for New Zealand. I think it's made us a much better, tolerant, open country as we've tried to work out what it means. But there are different interpretations of it and there are different understandings of it. We're not aligned in a common understanding of that. And that's why I think the government should make a case for what is co-governance and where are we going with it. Fundamentally, co-governance as a concept is not well articulated or understood. In New Zealand's history, whether it's been national or Labour governments, something like treaty settlements, everybody said, hey, listen, we're on board with that. That sounds great. We need to try and address wrongs from the past, as imperfect as it has been, but that's a good thing that's taken New Zealand people on that journey. We haven't done that here on co-governance, right? I appreciate in Māoridom there might be a really good understanding and literacy around what we're actually going, what it's about and where it may be going to. But that's not clear to everybody in New Zealand. And that's not fair, right?
You're not helping. You're not helping with that conversation because you're using words like separatism.
I'm not.
You have used words like separatism.
I'm saying to you, two systems doesn't work for us, right? I'm saying to you, I think a single system that can really target people on the basis of need, partner with different community organisations, different businesses, working together to deliver those outcomes is important.
This system is seen by many Māori as hugely separatist. There are barriers to access to advice and care. It is one system which is not designed by and for Māori.
But you can create components within it, right?
We've had components.
But we could do it better. We can do it much better.
So can I just ask you, genuinely, do you think that it's feasible that Māori would have ceded sovereignty?
Well, I think we are one sovereign country, Article 1 of the treaty. That's what that's about.
Te tiriti.
Of the treaty.
Te tiriti. What is in Te Tiriti?
Well, we have different interpretations.
No, what is in Te Tiriti?
Well, what I'm saying to you is I think that, I'm looking at the articles going, first article is really about ceding sovereignty, that we're one country. Second article is about rangatiratanga, that people can have...
So you're talking about the English text that was signed by about 50 people. Do you think that Māori, who have been in the majority, having the conversation in Māori, would have said, here?
So why don't we have a government that comes out and gives us a common understanding then, if that's the case?
That's all through the
New Zealanders.
Tribunal research.
But why don't we make it clear to 5 million New Zealanders, if that's the case, that what is the government's interpretation of the treaty and co-governance and where that's all going?
Chris, you often say that what we need is an intelligent conversation around co-governance and even the UN UNDRIP. How prepared are you for that conversation?
Well, I'm up for that conversation. That's why I'm here with you today. I'm coming on your show because, we want to discuss these issues. I've given you a different perspective. I appreciate it's not your perspective, but I'm actually I'm putting forward what I think and what we think.
Christopher Luxon was literally a high flyer at Air New Zealand. It was regularly voted the world's best airline and it was profitable with it. But making profits for a corporation is way different to spending it, which Prime Ministers have to do. So your previous jobs that you had, very impressive. That's all about maximising profit, making profit, and you did very...
I disagree with that. I think if you're a modern CEO in the 2020s, like I was, I think if you look at what I did at Air New Zealand with respect to advancing Māori Pacifica within that business, actually if you think about what I did around domestic violence, paid 3-week holidays, paid 3-week annual leave for perpetrators and also victims. I think I did a lot around understanding that Air New Zealand wasn't just about maximising profit.
If you didn't make money, though, you might have been tossed out the way.
Sure, that's a job, but that's the same job here. You've got to get the economy working right, because if you want to make investments to deal with the inequities that we've got in our system, you have to have a strong economy.
And you've got to spend money. Is that a little bit against the grain from being a CE?
I made investments and spent money all the time. I think that's the thing, is you like to stereotype me as a CEO and say that's a certain type of person that's only obsessed with money. If you're a good CEO, you care about all stakeholders in a business, not just shareholders.
Can you hear that? It's quite loud, eh?
Is that the police helicopter, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, they always come around.
20% increase in serious crime under this government.
Do you believe that institutional and structural racism exists?
I think there's bias in different organisations. I think we're doing a better job of working it out and being more aware of it. I've been in organisations where we've gone on big journeys around that and leading for change.
Is that about people going on their individual journey to understand how their decisions impact on others, or is it about structural kind of change?
No, I think a lot of it, from my own experience, it's been, I arrived at Air New Zealand, 16% of our top 100 jobs were held by women. That didn't make any sense. If you can't deal with gender, you can't deal with ethnicity, you can't deal with sexual orientation, other elements of diversity as well. And so really it was understanding, yes, there was unconscious bias in our organisation around that, and so we went on a process of that, and we were able to, in 2 years, be able to fix that and have 45% women in those top 100 jobs.
You said something about the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, that we need to have another conversation around that, about how that can be implemented. So that was signed in 2010. Did John Key drop the ball because he never had a conversation with the public about that?
No, I think it was a really good thing to do, and we support that. But the UNDRIP thing didn't mean that the logical conclusion was hapua. It was left to individual countries to act with their own discretion as to what that could mean for them.
Hapua is just a discussion.
No, but these two issues have got linked, because hapua. But again, the government wasn't clear about that, right?
But Hapua is just a discussion document that lays out a spectrum of answers.
Absolutely, so that's how it was presented after the document was, revealed as to what it was.
But now we know.
Well, we do, so we're going to find out what it all means eventually. But again, the government should be proactive and spend its large political capital, make the case, and take the New Zealand people with them on the journey they want to go on. That's what we've done on constitutional matters before. That wasn't clear to everyday New Zealanders sitting out there in the main street. So I think the bottom line is, yes, UNDRIP was something, but it's not a logical conclusion. Hapua isn't a logical conclusion of UNDRIP. How
do you intend to attract the Māori vote and even candidates?
What I'd say to you is I've had a great outreach with candidates over summer, people that previously had no interest in running for the National Party, but are now very excited about what's happening with our leadership changes. So I've had some great conversations. We've had 290 people put their hands up for what we call National 101, people wanting to explore candidacy. 90% of them we've never met before as a party. So I don't have a problem. I think we'll have some outstanding Māori candidates in this upcoming election. I'm thinking of 2 or 3 already that we've had conversations with. And so, the reality is, if we're going to be a national party, when you look at it, we have to be a national party. And that means talking and presenting our centre-right politics, principles and beliefs to all communities across New Zealand. And that's what I'm really committed to doing.
How's Te Reo going, by the way?
I've really struggled, to be honest, just trying to find a way to do it in a way that can work for me. But I've got a tutor coming in after Easter, and we're going to spend Monday afternoon just going through it together. So I'm really hopeful and really excited about it, because it's something I've wanted to do for a long time.
It is something that can be a little bit nerve-wracking.
I wish I had the opportunity to learn earlier, do you know what I mean, to be honest, because it's something I want to do. I think it's important, and I just have I'm just really curious about it. I really admire people who've gone on that journey to learn it.
Are there any Māori politicians in the other parties that you kind of get on with all right?
I get on with a number of them. I tried to, my old life, I know the other side of politics and all those politicians really well, because I worked with everybody, obviously. And so, I admire Calvin Davis, I admire Willie Jackson. I found them really good people, honourable people. They have their point of view, they throw their punches, but at a personal level I found them really good. And there's the fact, and I think that's really special about New Zealand politics, is that I lived in America for 8 years, and I I remember talking to President Obama about it, and just sort of, you know, when I was there, 60% of Americans could agree on what their country was about, and today it would be anywhere just below 30%. And that's a really sad thing, because you can't zip that division back up again. And I think in New Zealand, because our politics and our politicians run into each other all the time, we're highly accessible to the public, and we're highly accessible to each other.
It's quite special, isn't it?
It's really special, and
Yeah.
we've got to keep the civility in our politics. So you and I can disagree without being disagreeable, and also find a way to be able to maintain relationship. And I think that's the great thing about New Zealand politics, and that's what I don't want to see change. I want to be able to, as my grandmother say, disagree without being disagreeable. So,
Well, all the best for as you head into the election.
thank you, and thanks for having me on the show and engaging with me. I appreciate it.
Special thanks to Christopher Luxon for sharing his time with us, and thanks to Steve from the Kingslander. Kia ora. Just a shout out to some of our iwi radio stations. You can catch me on Tūranga FM, Te Aroa FM and Moana Radio every Monday to give you a heads up on what's coming up on our show. Next Monday, we are off air as Māori Television screens its groundbreaking Anzac special. Don't forget, you can watch the show all over again on our Facebook page, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and the conversations continue on Twitter. See you back on May the 2nd. Pō Marie.